Yeah, sorry about that, mate. Just gonna have to get someone else. Okay. Righto. See ya. Sucker. Ooh. G'day folks, I'm back in the workshop. This time a chilly winter day workshop. I've upgraded my kayak. Basically it's exactly the same as the other one except for a couple of things. You'll notice on the old kayak, which I have sold, it had a rounded moulded seat area, and the new one, which is basically exactly the same, but as you can see it comes with a supplied much better seat, and it fits into square moulds built into the kayak. Also, this kayak comes with the foot pedals for the rudder installed. Now I could have had that on the last kayak, but I bought that second hand and it never did come with the foot pedals or the rudder. But it comes as standard when you buy a new one. My friend Adam, you may have seen him on the water with me. He's got this kayak, exact same, and he's got the rudder. And he says it does come in handy every now and then. I wasn't sure whether I'd really need it, so I'll be giving that a go on the water too on my maiden launch. See how I feel about a rudder. And that's it. That's the upgraded model. A better seat situation, and of course you get the rudder, which also came with the old model anyway. However, it makes for a much easier working solution situation for bringing in the alternative boat seat, which I still like. And I haven't tested this seat yet on the water, the supplied seat, which I'm going to. I'm going to see how I feel about it. It's padded, looks very comfortable, but I absolutely love the swivel nature of the boat seat, because since I've had the boat seat on the other kayak and have gotten out, I've pulled up to the side of banks and simply just swiveled around and stood out of the kayak. It's actually a lot easier. So I'm going to have it as a second option. I'll do a maiden launch on the new kayak, which hasn't touched water yet, and I'll see how I go. Just paddle around for the morning and see what I think of that seat. But I'm still going to do this one as a backup. Either way, both of them simply just pull out and they automatically become camp seats around the campfire, that kind of thing. Comfortable seats to sit on. And so that's one thing, is you don't have to take an extra chair for the campsite. You just pull your boat seat out, or your kayak seat, and put that down by the fire. So, I'm in the workshop to make up the frame for the base of the swivel seat. The second part to this upgrade is when it comes to being out on the water and you've got your fishing gear, you've got the lid of the console, which has many hole positions that you can put your forward placing rod holder in. Of course you do have two inbuilt rod holders behind you, but you want one in front of you, of course, while you're actually fishing. But I'm planning to have a couple of other things on board. I want options for camera setups, GoPros, that kind of thing. And also, I've bought a fish finder, and so I need to place that somewhere at the front. And obviously, a great solution from Railblazer. Fantastic range of products for boats and kayaks and all that. I'm not affiliated. It's not a plug, I'm just saying they're just a great range of products. So I've got this tray with 4 star ports. You can have a rod, a GoPro, a sounder, and a coffee cup holder, which I've also got. With the tray comes 2 little fixing brackets that you actually pop into a star port. and you can have a setup pretty much fixed directly to your kayak like that. However, I've got my boat Baitboard, which is quite large, not necessarily for a kayak, but I love this because I could sit my tackle box on here and work directly in front of me with the tackle box. And what I'm thinking is I'm going to use these into a fixed starport on either side, of which my tray will sit on top, and that tray, and then the tray, I can put anything I want in these 4 starports on the tray. And so I need to work out a way that I'm going to place it in a quick release situation on the kayak, and it needs to sit high enough so that my feet, boots and legs can travel easily underneath to the paddle, but not too high. Now I'll find the right height basically. That's the simple drop-in frame design that I'm going with. I'll simply take the supplied seat and use the measurements of that frame, match it to this, yes, 25mm by 25mm steel tubing. It is steel, not aluminium. Bit of weight in it, but it's not that much, to be honest. The boat seat with its swivel base will simply be fixed as such to those 2 bars, and I'll basically pick up the whole lot, drop it in, take it out, and there's my comfy camp chair. This steel has come from the internal framing of a roof rack system that was on a fiberglass canopy. The canopy is no good, it's leaky and just terrible, so that's going to the dump. But I sold the roof rack and the guy didn't want to take the internal framing, so I basically got all of this was connected together to make the internal framing of the canopy. Perfect material for what I need. So that is a mock-up of how the frame will look. Of course those bars will not be sitting on top, they will be finished flush, and you'll simply be able to just lift the boat seat out with that framing and pop it back in again. So how am I going to join these crossbars flush with the back bar? I'm still not a welder. I have a welder, but I can't weld. Fortunately, these bars from the internal framing of the canopy have a welded in thread for these bolts that just screw in, so I can simply drill a hole on the outside of this one big enough for this bolt to thread through and hold 2 of them to one of the bars. Of course the other end doesn't have the thread, so I still have the issue of fitting the other end, but I'm not a welder. Fortunately, I have another piece of spare steel tubing which is smaller than the black stuff, and it just happens to fit perfectly inside this one. So if I just cut a piece to slide inside this, position it where I want, secure that with a couple of flathead metal screws, and I can then drill a hole in the longer section into that piece of steel that's inside this tubing. Are you following me on this? You'll see what I mean. I'll just put you through one of those cuts. No need to watch it all. Okay, well I have all my pieces cut and I've determined the spacing for screwing down the base plate of the swivel plate. I've drilled a couple of holes here for those big bolts to screw in to the end that had the welded in thread. So I just got to tighten those ones up. As you can see, I can just screw this in. Tighten them up. I've also just got to check that these are reasonably square. That's good. That's good. And then of course this one will be fitted after I put a little square each of these in the end of that. Fit them off. Drill another hole each on out here and screw into this. Beautiful. Okay, there we have our little end pieces screwed in, top and bottom. Now all we have to do, screw through into those pieces with a couple of screws on the outside. Okay, so here's our frame. I've done a couple of steel cross braces to stop it moving out of square. This is the back, obviously with those screw-in bolts. And I've just used a couple of roofing screws, metal roofing screws, to go through this steel and into the fixed steel that I put inside. It's pretty strong, not very heavy. So that's the back, this is the front. Sits in there okay. I've just now got to place the plate for the swivel. And I've got to determine where I want that. I can't come too far forward because I'll cover the front console. So that I'll think about and try and get the exact right position that I want. If I don't, I'll have to move it and drill new holes. Of course, I've also put internal fitting rubber stoppers into that metal, so no problems rubbing up against the kayak surface. And there it is, boat seat in a kayak once more. I think I've got less clearance on that back wall than the last one, but I can't help thinking it looks a bit higher than the last one. But I'm going to get out on the water and I'm going to take both seats with me and see how they feel. It's quite possible I'll be reverting back to the supplied seat, which is a very good seat. But I do have the boat seat as a backup. I'll put the other one in and you can have a look at the height difference. Comfortable swivel boat seat, pretty high, could end up being too top heavy. Factory supplied, white lab coated scientist designed supplied seat. I would say once you're sitting in that and you've pressed your butt into there, you're probably just below the surface of this edge, and like I say, it's probably scientifically perfect. However, I'll get them both out on the water one at a time and see which one I like best. I actually like having the idea of two options. There really is nothing quite like swiveling around on your kayak to get yourself out of it at the edge of a bank. And because it's that little bit higher, it's actually not as hard to lift yourself out or push yourself out. It'll all come down to whether or not it's too top heavy. I didn't mind it on the other one. I didn't really notice it that much. But either way, they both make excellent camp chairs. So now I've got to move on to part 2 of this little project, and that is fitting my baitboard and my rail track in a nice comfortable position in front of me with enough clearance so that my boots don't interfere. However, I think we know what time of day it is now. Coffee time. A baitboard. A tiny little camp chair from the op shop, $1. Let's see if we can make this work as a bait tray table in front of me on the kayak. Added to the rag pile. Okay, to have a nice even fit, I'm putting a leg on either side of this. Solid piece of plastic here, but nothing here. So I need to find something to fit in here, a block of some kind that ends up being the same height as that. Let's see what I can find. Offcuts from my brother's decking material, which essentially is that eco deck, which is essentially plastic. Won't shrink, rot, expand, or anything, or even fade in colour. Perfect. So I've taken obviously my legs off my little camp chair, and I've used 4 saddle clips for copper piping. It was the only size I had to go around this tubing, and I've fixed them with screws on either side where I put the blocks in, the packing blocks, and on this side I've used nut and bolts because I'm only going through the thickness of the plastic and I didn't want sharp screws poking through there. So you can get a bit of an idea of what I'm trying to do here. I've got the folding legs and I'm going to try and fix in some position just on the outside top of the kayak. Obviously the legs won't be this long, but if you think a little bit further down the track, a quick release system, I've got myself a camp table. Pretty handy, hey? Whoa, what is this? It's like a little camp table. So some changes were made. I'll run you through them. So what I've done here is I have first of all determined my height by sitting in the kayak and measuring just how high I want this above my feet, above the toes of my boot, and I've got heaps of clearance. And it's not so high that it's there on me when I sit forward, and it's just right there in front of me, so it's perfect. What I did is I really didn't need to break up that $1 little camp chair that I got from the op shop because those legs weren't wide enough. They were too narrow in here. So I took another camp chair that I'd already busted up and used these steel legs, or aluminium, whatever they are, cut them down to the height I needed. Put in a couple of, or one each, little hard plastic stoppers. And then I did go out and get these table stays, or desktop stays they call them. Little hinges basically that you know, you just do that, fold it down. Unfortunately they do stick up like this. It could be just a positioning thing of the hinges that I haven't thought out properly, but open it back up, lock it in. Don't need to do the front ones, that is super solid as is. They come in pairs for, you know, either side, but I really don't need to do the front ones because they're not, simply not moving once those two hinges are locked in. And these hinges are at the far end of the board, past my feet, which is great. So now I'll show you how I fitted it to the kayak, very simply. So the problem with these kayaks is there's no flat surfaces to work with. They're all curved on the inside, curved on the outside, and of course they also taper in. There's no straight flat surfaces. The only flat surfaces there are the top of these pedal rails. So, as you can see right there, is an external stop, rubber stop or hard plastic stop for legs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you see that screw? Can you see that screw? So the 4 of those on the legs, table placed exactly where I want it. A little bit of a texture job around it. Each one, pull them off, screw them in, and watch how easy it is to mount and dismount this kayak bait table slash camp table. So I simply come in with the table, start a couple of legs off, push down on each of those, and I have a completely rock solid bait table, tackle box holder. Of course I've still got to put my tray across here with the ignore that one because that's going to come off. This one's going to remain, that's just for my front fishing rod. I've already had that in place, but I will have the tray across here. However, it's actually a perfect height. It's great for camera setup. Good space between me and the seat. I don't have to lean too far forward at all to reach anything. Heaps of clearance for my feet, boots, whatever. Hinges are past the rudder pedals. I can easily unclip and lift out the lid to the console. It's almost the perfect setup. Now to take it out, just start off one of the legs. They're a little bit tight, of course. They are rubber stops for these legs. There's 1, 2, 3, and it's always a tight one. And the whole thing came out there. I'm going to have to put a fatter screw on that one. That's a bummer. Okay, so I did just pull the tight one right out. Obviously stripped the thread in the plastic rail there on the kayak. So I'll have to put in a fatter screw there and create a new thread into that plastic. Hopefully that'll hold tight. Now, the chair stoppers that I've used are for this size tubing, and so they're quite a firm grip, which is great for when it's on the kayak because it won't lift out. You could probably capsize the kayak and it won't fall out because it's nice and tight. So it is a bit of a lift, to get them out of there. And there's every possibility that with just a screw going into a threaded plastic thread that they could pull out if you're a little bit rough with it. Now I could go the next chair stopper size up, but I've had them sitting, I've got them and I sat them in there and the table just moved around too much. It's only millimeters, but still it moved, and you just want it solid. And so if I can get these anchored correctly, these tighter ones, so that they don't pull out like that. So the final thing I've got to do is fit my rail, my track on the baitboard, leaving enough room at the front for the tackle box and the space at the back for the knives, and I'll be good to go. Be back on the water next weekend. Weather's fining up. We're out for an overnighter. So I think I'll get on to this tomorrow. Yeah, sorry mate, you're going to have to get someone else to help you with that. I'm pretty busy at the moment. Well, actually I'm right in the middle of a lake. I'm out doing some fishing, so yeah, I could be out here for days. No, the video function on my phone's not working. I can't really show you. Yeah, sorry about that, mate. Just gonna have to get someone else. Okay. Righto. See ya. Sucker. Ooh. Well, I'm very happy with that result. I've got a perfectly functional bait table, slightly elevated tray for my various things, rod holder. I've got the second rod holder here that was already there, but I can whack it up to here. I've got the drink holder. One of these will be for the sounder when I get to fitting that. The table being quick release, take it over to the campsite for a little camp table, along with my boat seat or the other seat. I'm going to try them both, see how they go. But the swivel action really wins out when it comes to getting in and out of the boat. And then of course this coming weekend, the maiden voyage for the brand new kayak. I'll also be using a brand new tent for the first time and a brand new sleeping mat. Looking forward to that. They're very lightweight items. I've basically got them with the idea of hiking in mind. But of course they'll come with me on kayak trips as well. There's also a canoe in my future. Not yet, but sometime in the future. So I'll have choices. Well, I'm glad I went the simplicity route on this one. It's very simple. I think it's going to be perfectly functional. So now all I've got to do is look forward to getting on the water. As always, Stay well, folks.